Are you ready for this? Of course you are. Come on, don't be shy. Don't let a fancy suit impress you. Don't let 1,000 fancy suits impress you. Be the thorn in history's side. Choose the greatest enemies. The captain. Sorry, mate. The emperor. The boss's boss.
Requiescat in pace.
And make even greater friends.
Decent work, Leonardo.
Don't just pick a fight. Start a revolution. Get the bigger picture. Go too far. Go too fast. Face the invisible. The impossible. The unspeakable. Welcome to the greatest playground. History.
Welcome. And if you saw that intro, then you know this is about the Assassin's Creed showcase and 15 years of Assassin's Creed in general. So this is like a mini my history with appreciation for why I like or care about Assassin's Creed despite the developers' little issues going on. So I just want to say this. I love Assassin's Creed for the history aspect. I love the historical settings. I love exploring the worlds that they bring you to. You know, whether it's the Holy Land in 1190, the Italian Renaissance in the 15th century, all the way up to Constantinople in the early 1500s, whether you're in the American Revolution in the 1700s, whether you're in the Caribbean in the early 1700s, whether you're in Victorian London in the early 1800s, whether you're in the French Revolution as well, also in the late 1700s, or what else was there? Oh yeah, Odyssey, obviously. Way before any other game. Origins in 30, 40 BC. Valhalla in the 9th century. The worlds that they bring you to, the settings you get to explore because of these games are, in the end, what keeps me coming back, regardless of the quality of said game itself. There are some that are obviously better than others in areas that others are weaker in. You know, not every game is strong in every aspect. Not every game is weak in every aspect. One game could have a better story but a weaker setting. Another could have a weaker setting but a greater story. One game could have a good setting and story but a bad main character. Others could have a bad main character but a great setting, you know? It really does not matter. I mean, I have completed every mainline Assassin's Creed game, and the only two I have not completed are Rogue and Liberations. I would complete Liberations, but my PS4 is overheating like nothing else, so I can't really access it through my Assassin's Creed 3 remaster. Rogue, I've never owned in any way, shape, or form, so I've never played it. I've never had any interest in playing it since my issues with Assassin's Creed 4 ship mechanics burned me out so bad that I was honestly a little afraid that Rogue would be more of the same of Black Flag, so I avoided it. But you know, I'm a diehard defender of both Unity and Syndicate. I've come to grips with Connor's contributions to the series, despite him still being pretty much my least favorite protagonist in the series still. Obviously, Assassin's Creed 1 is probably the worst game in the series, but it's got a solid story and a very intriguing setting, and it set the foundations going forward. Assassin's Creed 2 through Revelations really refined how the story flow would work. In the same way, Origins redefined the series as a whole, transitioning into a expansive open world RPG. But that is the main reason why I always come back to these games, regardless of the developer issues. Okay, so my mom came downstairs, so I had to take a little bit of a break. Anyway, where was I? Oh yeah, the RPG games are fine. I enjoy the RPG games. I like Origins. Origins setting is amazing. I like Odyssey. I find its characters really cool. I find that the overworld of Greece is a little bloated and padded. But that's really my biggest issue with Odyssey is it's too big. Whereas Valhalla is not as big compared to Odyssey, but is still jam-packed in its own little nature. But I'd say Valhalla is my favorite of the three RPG titles. I think mainly because I like Eivor the most. I think Eivor's the most middle ground, whereas Alexios/Cassandra, yeah, they have the dramatic moments, but they're more of a funny character. A badass funny character. Whereas Bayek, yeah, he has his moments, but he's more like Connor, where he's more serious and vengeful than he is, letting loose or just being a person. He's consumed by his mission, you could say, just like Connor Kenway was. Whereas Connor's personality only really shone or shined in the homestead missions. Which a lot of people skipped out on. As far as characters go, before we jump into the new announces from the showcase, which, by the way, I'll show the trailer and then I'll show the trailer again, but talk over it or give my thoughts on said game. But yeah, I'd have to say I like Altair. Not in the beginning. I don't really like Altair until like the last round of going through Jerusalem, Acre, and Damascus. Ezio's amazing. I don't agree with my brother-in-law. I think Ezio's a really good character. Connor's a bit boring. Like I said, you only really get his personality in optional missions. Edward Kenway is one of the best characters in the entire franchise, hands down. I have no opinion on Shay or Evelise, the girl from Liberations, because I didn't play those games, so I know nothing about them, really. Then you have Arno. I love Arno. I think he's a good step in the direction of trying to have an Ezio-esque character without making them full-on Ezio. And then you have Evie and Jacob Fryer. I don't hate Jacob, I just don't prefer him. I like Evie a lot more. She's one of my favorite characters in the entire franchise. Bayek, I don't care for. I don't hate, but I don't care for. He's in the same boat as Connor. Alexios/Cassandra, I love them. They're so charming. They're such a good character. Well developed, for sure. And with a game that's that big, they better be well developed. And Eivor is an even more well-rounded character than Alexios/Cassandra. I think that's why I like them more. Why Valhalla edges over Odyssey. But yeah, let's just jump into the new Assassin's Creed Showcase. Is new game announcements, which there are 4 of. And then after we're done with that, I'm going to talk about my biggest concern with Assassin's Creed going forward.
Basim Ebneshal. Are you ready to give up who you once thought you were?
I am.
Ready to sacrifice everything you held close?
I am.
Are you ready to leave your life behind and walk the path of shadows?
I am.
Then out of the dark, you will come into the light. And from the light, you will return to the dark. Never forget the tenets you have sworn to uphold. Stay your blade from the flesh of the innocent. Hide in plain sight. Never compromise the Brotherhood. From this day forward, you are a hidden one.
Okay, so Assassin's Creed Mirage is the story of how Basim joined the Brotherhood, and this game takes place in Baghdad, 20 years before the events of Valhalla, which means this game is still in the 9th century in the 800s, probably around 800 in the late 840s and the early 850s, I would think, because I'm pretty sure Valhalla takes place in the late to early 860s/70s, so it makes sense. And this game is also a modern take on the older Assassin's Creed style, which they are now calling legacy games, which is basically any game prior to Origins. To Ubisoft, the only 3 games that are new or modern are Origins, Odyssey, and Valhalla. Anything prior to Origins, Syndicate, and older, they are now terming legacy titles to sort of, I guess, differentiate themselves or distance themselves from the style of those games, for the more modern RPG open world take, which they obviously are not ditching anytime soon, just because this game is going back to the old gameplay style. From what I understand, Mirage is a test to see how well the old style can still do, and if it is worth doing smaller scale projects like this in the older gameplay style. Another thing I've heard is that Mirage is also a test, or another reason they consider Mirage worth doing is to help them in their remake of the very first Assassin's Creed game, so they can reuse a lot of assets from this game into the remake, considering the locale of Baghdad is very similar to the locales of Assassin's Creed 1 in Jerusalem, Damascus, and Acre, as well as, Masyaf. But it makes sense why they would use this game to help create the assets to then bring over and maximize the usage of the assets for a remake of Assassin's Creed 1, because you're never really going to have a location this close to the Holy Wars. I mean, this game only takes place like 200 to 300 years before the Holy Wars anyway, prior to Altair's events that took place in 1190. 1191, somewhere around there. So yeah, Mirage seems like it's going to be a nostalgia trip while fleshing out Basim. Now, the first game they showed off is Assassin's Creed Codename Red, which is a game set in feudal Japan as a shinobi, which gives me strong Edo Japan Live Alive vibes for sure. And this is the game everybody's been wanting. Everybody's been asking for a feudal Japan game. And I know a lot of people are being like, oh, too little, too late, ma. It's like, bro, just give it a rest. You asked for it, and they're finally giving it to you. And you were probably going to complain with every other game announcement in the future that it wasn't going to be in feudal Japan. So that's another thing that I don't get, is when people go little too late, but if they didn't announce it and they announced another game, you would have been saying, I wished it was in feudal Japan. So that's a little cynical, kind of annoying tidbit that a more toxic mindset might have on this. There is no real issue with Assassin's Creed going to Japan, feudal Japan, with a shinobi philosophy, theme, and style. The real issue with Assassin's Creed Red is the developer, and it's not the Quebec team in general, which this is being made by the Quebec team who made Syndicate and Odyssey, two really fantastic games. No, the big issue with this game is the head of that development team, Dumont, who's in a lot of hot water and is driving people out of the company. Like, not literally driving them out himself, but because of his attitude and his actions, people are leaving the Quebec team because of him. They're ditching the Quebec team because they don't want to deal with Dumont because of his, I guess you could say, his hot-headed, verbally abusive temper and Obviously, he was one of the people tied to the misconduct allegations within Ubisoft. So that is the big issue with Codename Red that could potentially hold it back, is Dumont himself, the man in charge of the game. But outside of that, there's nothing wrong with him going to feudal Japan. There's no reason Ubisoft should never go to feudal Japan because Ghost of Tsushima did it. It's like, one, Ghost of Tsushima and Assassin's Creed Red are two different games with a similar setting. Ghost of Tsushima was a feudal Japan game set on the island of Tsushima, focusing on the samurai code and the moral gray area of having to break said code to succeed against the Khan. Whereas Assassin's Creed Red, also set in feudal Japan, will focus on the shinobi, which is sort of the exact opposite of the samurai. So you'll have the opposite dilemma, whereas in Ghost of Tsushima, you're encouraged to fight like a samurai, but deviate and become a ghost when necessary. Whereas the shinobi don't have that issue. That's their code to begin with, is to strike from the shadows and take out their enemies silently, which makes sense for assassins. Assassins and shinobis are very similar in theme, which makes them the perfect love letter. And honestly, I'm glad they haven't done feudal Japan setting until now, because let's face it, if they did a feudal Japan setting back in 2013-14, this game wouldn't have been as good as it could be now. It wouldn't have looked as good as it could now. My only thing with Ubisoft open world games going forward is that I hope they scale back on the scale, which they said going forward that not all games will be as big and as long as Odyssey or Valhalla, which are both tremendously long games. You can sink 100 hours into easily. Origins being a much more digestible game that you can still sink 100 hours into if you've tried hard enough. But Origins is easily a game you can beat in 30 hours. It's not as long when you compare it to Odyssey, which is easily the longest of the three games, and Valhalla, which is slightly less longer than Odyssey. I don't know. That's a conversation for another time, or another part of this video. But yeah, Assassin's Creed, there's nothing wrong with it. And I even saw somebody who said, because I was on a Facebook post and somebody was commenting about, how it was a little too late for them to do Japan now because of Ghost of Tsushima. And it's like, oh, well, one, no, Samurai and Shinobi are completely different. Like, the games will feel different regardless. Not only that, but they'll have a different setting. Obviously, Assassin's Creed Red will not take place on the island of Tsushima. That is a literal suicide for the game if they were to do that. They'll probably be on the mainland of Japan in Red. Just how much of Japan they cover, I hope they keep it to a set area and not make the whole frickin' island of Japan. Please, please do not make the whole island of Japan, because that is too much. But yeah, and then somebody commented, was like, yeah, like, Xiao Jin doesn't exist. I forget her name. It's Xiao something. It's like, what are you talking about, dude? Xiao is from Chinese descent. Do you not remember that she was the main lead in Assassin's Creed China Chronicles? She's not Japanese, dude. She's Chinese.
Infinity is going to be a hub that will unite all our different experiences and our players together in meaningful ways.
So, obviously, that begs the question, if you're connecting players and there's more than one player, a lot of people will be thinking, are we talking multiplayer?
Well, Danny, it seems we can't hide anything from you.
You can't.
So we're actually investigating how we will bring back standalone multiplayer experiences into the Assassin's Creed universe, all connected to the Infinity Hub.
The second game they announced was Assassin's Creed Hexe, which is German for the word witch. And this game will presumably take place during the witch trials in Europe, most likely Germany, which is interesting. I really like that concept. We've never been to Germany, let alone, I think, that time period of the 1600s. Which, I mean, the location of the game or the time period of the game really isn't confirmed, because the witch trials in Germany lasted from anywhere between the 1500s to the 1800s. So it literally could be anywhere in that 300-year stretch. I would assume they would place it not closer to the 1800s, but probably more closer to the 1500s. So that's why I'm thinking the 1600s is the sweet spot for Assassin's Creed Hexe. For the German witch trial setting, granted, they could throw us off. It could not be in Germany, but given Hexe being the Germanic word for witch, makes you think that it's a hint for the game being in Germany without that being confirmed. Which is weird that they don't confirm sort of the location for this game as blatantly as they did Red. I find that bizarre. And for me, obviously, Hexe is the lesser intriguing title, but also probably the less problematic. Assassin's Creed Hexe is also being developed by the Assassin's Creed Montreal team, which is the original team, the first team, the team that made the first few Assassin's Creed games. So I have no doubt that Hexe will be good and will probably be a more darker game in tone compared to, say, Unity or Syndicate or even titles prior to that. Really, I expect Hexe to be a more grittier, darker game akin to Valhalla, which Valhalla, again, was a little gritty and darker. But I assume Hexe will be pretty dark compared to most games in this series, just given its theme and its tone that this trailer is vibing off. Now, this is the one game I didn't show the trailer for because I didn't have the energy for it. This is Codename Jade, which is an open world Assassin's Creed game for mobile devices set in, as you saw, 2015 BCE China. Man, this is just a waste of a setting. Why would you waste a China setting on a mobile title? Like, come on. Like, don't get me wrong, mobile titles have their place in the market, for sure, but I am not a mobile gamer. I will never touch this game. I will never play this game. If this game even has anything important to the story, I will just watch cutscenes of it on the internet. Because I don't play mobile titles. I never have, I never will, because they don't intrigue me. There's nothing about mobile titles that make me happy or enjoyed, and it's probably because my phone has a crappy battery life to begin with. My phone drains so fast. That's probably because it's really old. I've had it since 2018, I think. I got a Samsung Galaxy S6 in 2015, and then I dropped that in the snow, and after that, it just started finicking out from the water within the snow, and then I got it traded in for Samsung Galaxy S7, and I've had that S7 ever since. So that might be a big reason of why I don't really touch mobile titles. But I don't know. I don't know, man. If I have to play Assassin's Creed Jade on my phone, I'm not playing it. I'm just not. And to me, that makes this setting of 215 BCE China a waste of time. All right. Now that we've watched the trailers of Assassin's Creed Mirage, the mobile title of Codename Jade, which again, why are you making a mobile title, Ubisoft? Not even my biggest issue. My biggest worry, my biggest fear going forward is Infinity Hub. Assassin's Creed Infinity Hub. Why is that a fear for me? Why is that a worry for me? Because there's so much that's not known about it. The only thing we do know is it's something you will be able to go to and then be able to select an Assassin's Creed title to play from there. How does that work with physical copies? As someone who is a physical collector, I like to have the game physically in my hand. How is that going to affect or work with physical copies? Are you just going to be able to buy Infinity Hub or Assassin's Creed Infinity? Then you click on it, and then you have to buy Codename Red, Codename Hexe. It'll probably just eventually be called Assassin's Creed Red and Assassin's Creed Hexe. Who knows? Maybe. But yeah, the Infinity Hub in general is my worry. How will that work with physical copies? Is going forward? Because here's what I want to know. Going forward, is the Infinity Hub going to make Assassin's Creed physical copies non-existent? Will you not be able to buy your own copy of Assassin's Creed Red? Just plop it in your system and play. Like you can with Origins, Odyssey, and Valhalla, and any other video game on the planet Earth that has a physical copy. Or will Infinity just be a digital-only hub that you have to download, whether it's for free or at whatever price? I don't know. It depends. It could be a subscription service as well, where you have to pay so much money for the year to have access to the titles in the hub. You can only subscribe to Ubisoft's Infinity Hub to play said game. So you can never own your own personal copy. And that's my fear, because I'm a physical person. In that aspect, I'm a physical collector. Like my Disney movie collection. I want to physically own all the Disney movies, even though I have access to Disney Plus. That is my biggest issue with Infinity Hub, is my worrying on how it'll affect physical copies going forward for the franchise, and my ability to purchase just that game and have a physical copy of it. Because I highly doubt they will release Assassin's Creed Infinity as a physical thing that you can put in a system, and then it just updates to add whatever game. Because, dude, if you want that to be a hub, at one point, that Infinity Hub is going to have so many gigabytes attached to it that most systems eventually won't be able to hold it. It's like most systems standard come with like what, 500 gigabytes of data. With the way games are going in the future, every game is going to be like 50 to 100 gigabytes just for one game, which means you'll have at max be able to have, let's say 8 for the varying and the patches that are going to have to go on those games. 7 to 8 games before you can no longer really have the hub downloaded to your system without it taking up too much data. That's why, even though they're doing the hub, I hope they still do release it physically for those who want it, and not just keep it strictly to the Infinity, like exclusive to the Infinity Hub. You know, it's like, again, with the Disney Plus feature, you subscribe to their streaming site, right? So you have access to said stuff. That being said, they still do release the DVD and Blu-ray of movies that are coming to Disney Plus. But I think I've ranted long enough. I think you get the idea of my fear of Infinity Hub is making physical Assassin's Creed games obsolete and non-existent. Because as the collector in me, I don't like that. It's like when the Xbox One first came out, Microsoft was saying, yeah, you have to be online 24/7. You can't be offline. If you're offline, you can't play games, any games at all. And no loaning games out. You can't loan a physical copy out. It's just illegal. I don't know why I thought that would fly. That was the most dumb thing ever. Hands down, the worst E3 press conference in modern history. Modern gaming history. If not of all time, just for the audacity of the stuff they thought they could get away with, and then Sony just completely bashing them. But anyway, yeah, that's my fear with the hub. So yeah, I'm gonna end this video now before it gets too long. But yeah, let me know what Assassin's Creed game announcement you were most excited for. Was it Mirage? Was it Jade? Was it Red or Hexe? For me personally, obviously it's Red. I love Shinobis and stuff, but I'm still extremely intrigued by Hexe. And with that, I hope you have a great day. Remember, only you can be the best you can possibly be. Like the video, like, comment for the super special. Also subscribe if you haven't. That really me out. And ta-ta for now.